Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button so you don't miss any more shocking and captivating stories. Enjoy watching. Elliot Kane had always thought of himself as a patient man. He was the kind of person who carefully measured his words, who noticed little details others overlooked, and who believed in loyalty, not just in love, but in friendship, in work, in life itself. So when the first small doubts about his wife, Vanessa, crept into his mind, he tried to push them away. After all, their marriage seemed solid. They had met in college, married 5 years ago, and shared a cozy home in suburban Denver with 2 golden retrievers and a garden Vanessa insisted on tending, even though Elliot was convinced she spent more time photographing the flowers than actually watering them. But Elliot couldn't shake it. It started subtly. Vanessa's sudden obsession with her phone, a closed laptop she would shove toward him if he got too close, laughter that seemed directed at someone he wasn't privy to. When he asked what was funny, she'd reply with a casual, "Oh, just work stuff," or "You wouldn't get it," and smile in that way that had once made him feel like the luckiest man alive, now twisting in his gut like a knife. Elliot tried rationalizing it. Maybe it was stress. Maybe she was overwhelmed with her new marketing project at the boutique firm she worked for. But the intuition gnawed at him, persistent and insistent, and he had always trusted his gut. He began to notice patterns, texts that appeared and disappeared from her phone, little excuses about being late or staying late at work that didn't match up with the messages he saw in their shared calendar. The more he observed, the more he realized he was paying attention to everything Vanessa did, and the more it hurt to feel this nagging suspicion at the center of his life. One Saturday afternoon, while Elliot was fixing the kitchen sink, he heard the ping of a notification from his phone. He wasn't expecting any messages from anyone. He barely used messaging apps for casual chats. But there it was, an alert saying he had been added to a group chat. He frowned. The title of the chat read, "Girls' Night Laughs." Elliot hesitated. Normally, he would ignore such things. It was probably a mistake. He tapped the notification anyway, curiosity overpowering caution. What he saw made his stomach twist. The chat was buzzing with messages from several women. Vanessa was there, along with 2 of her close friends, Madison and Tori. The tone was casual, laughing, intimate. But the content, God, the content. It made his chest tighten in disbelief. "Can you believe he still has no idea?" Vanessa's message read, accompanied by a laughing emoji. Elliot's hands shook as he scrolled further. The messages went on, jokes about him, about her little adventures, and eventually, explicit discussions of a man named Ryan. Details that made it unmistakably clear. Vanessa was having an affair. Elliot sank onto the floor, the wrench still in his hand, and stared at the glowing screen. The room felt suddenly colder, smaller, suffocating. He read every message, each one a knife to his heart. The friends laughed about trips they had taken, secret late-night meetings, texts they'd sent to cover their tracks. Vanessa even joked about how easy it was to lie to him, how naive he seemed, how he always trusted her implicitly. Elliot wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, to shatter it, and make the reality disappear. But he didn't. Instead, a strange, cold determination settled over him. He had been blindsided, yes, but now he had proof. Not just suspicions, not just feelings that made him feel crazy at night. Proof. He spent the rest of the afternoon in a haze, rereading messages, taking screenshots, piecing together timelines. The betrayal was meticulous, practiced, and thorough. Vanessa had planned it with precision, carefully hiding her tracks. But the group chat, added to him by some accidental slip, an invitation meant for someone else, was an open window into her life. In the days that followed, Elliot didn't confront her immediately. He acted as though nothing had changed, smiled at her over breakfast, chatted about mundane work issues, and went on his usual errands. But inside, he was transforming. Every glance, every smile, every touch was measured, observed, catalogued. He began leaving his own subtle trails, small tests to see if she would slip, to see how she would react. He even began documenting things meticulously. Every late night at work, every girls' night out that Vanessa mentioned, every suspicious text he managed to catch. Each entry in his journal felt like laying down a piece of armor around his heart, a way to survive the storm he knew was coming. And yet, despite all the anger, the hurt, and the humiliation, there was an undeniable part of him that wanted to understand why. Why Vanessa had done this. Why the woman he had loved so fiercely, trusted so completely, could laugh about him behind his back. He knew it was a dangerous line of thinking, but curiosity was a hunger he couldn't ignore. Then one evening, he noticed something curious. Ryan, the man Vanessa was involved with, was mentioned repeatedly in ways that suggested a pattern. Elliot decided to dig deeper, not to confront yet, not to explode, but to understand. He checked social media, subtly, not from his account, but from a dummy profile he created, tracing connections, photos, comments. He started seeing a web of interactions, small, but telling. Comments under Vanessa's photos, likes on obscure posts, mutual friends that had never mentioned each other in conversation. It was overwhelming. It felt like walking into a house where all the lights were on, but every door was locked. And yet, Elliot felt a grim sort of exhilaration. He was finally seeing the truth, finally understanding the reality that had eluded him for so long. That night, he sat alone in the dark living room, the glow of his laptop casting harsh shadows across his face. He thought of their wedding, their first apartment, their vacations. He remembered how he had once promised to always protect her, and how he had believed she would do the same. And now everything was a lie. But Elliot Kane was not a man to break quietly. Not yet. Not while he still had control. The betrayal had hurt him beyond measure, but it had also awakened something he didn't know he had. A meticulous, patient, calculated resolve. He would uncover everything, every lie, every secret, every detail. And when he finally confronted her, she wouldn't be able to twist it away. The first part of his plan, Elliot realized, had already begun. Elliot Kane's days became a strange combination of normalcy and obsession. Outwardly, he maintained the routine of a husband who was deeply in love, but inside, he was unraveling a web of deceit. Every laugh Vanessa shared with him now felt hollow, every touch loaded with irony he couldn't shake. He felt like a man watching a play from the wings, forced to act along while knowing the plot was written without him. The first few days after the accidental discovery were filled with quiet tension. He watched Vanessa like a hawk, noting the times she checked her phone, the tone of her messages, and any sudden smiles that didn't involve him. At first, he considered confronting her immediately, demanding answers, screaming at her for the audacity, the betrayal, the lies. But every time he imagined the confrontation, a cold, rational part of him intervened. If he exploded now, he would lose control, and he needed control. He needed proof, complete and undeniable, before anything happened. So Elliot turned detective. He started subtly tracking her movements, always careful not to be obvious. He drove past her favorite cafe, pretending to run errands, watching if she met anyone. He followed social media threads more closely than ever, analyzing patterns in her posts, her comments, and especially the ones she liked. Ryan, the man from the group chat, was hard to miss once he knew what to look for. Photos tagged at the same locations, overlapping check-ins, and the occasional flirty comment hidden in plain sight. Elliot even went so far as to engage in what he called psychological testing. He would casually ask Vanessa questions about her day, her friends, or her schedule, carefully crafted to see if she would stumble, contradict herself, or slip information that might confirm what he already knew. Every lie she told, every evasive answer, only sharpened his focus. Vanessa, on the other hand, seemed blissfully unaware of his knowledge. She laughed at his jokes, kissed him on the cheek, and even planned small weekend trips, oblivious to the fact that Elliot's mind was elsewhere, cataloging, analyzing, and plotting. She thought she was clever, untouchable, but Elliot realized that overconfidence was a fatal flaw. One evening, Elliot found a small opportunity he couldn't resist. Vanessa had left her laptop open while she went to the kitchen to grab a drink. Normally, he would have refrained, but curiosity and rage combined into a dangerous cocktail. He slid the laptop closer, pretending to check his own emails, and scrolled through her chat applications. Nothing unusual at first. Her work messages were routine. But then, he found a string of texts with Ryan that were unmistakable. They were planning a weekend getaway, a hotel reservation in Boulder, with no mention of him. Elliot's hands trembled. He saved screenshots, cross-referenced them with dates from the group chat, and slowly began building an indisputable record. The anger he felt was mingled with disbelief, a painful mixture of humiliation and fascination. He kept asking himself, how could someone he trusted so completely betray him with such care, with such cold precision? His nights became sleepless. He would lie awake, phone in hand, scrolling through evidence, planning his next move, imagining confrontations and arguments, and trying to predict Vanessa's reactions. Each new message, each new post, felt like a punch to the gut. But Elliot realized something terrifying. He was beginning to almost enjoy the hunt. It gave him purpose, a sense of clarity in a world that had suddenly become chaotic and cruel. Vanessa, meanwhile, remained unknowingly candid. Elliot noticed small changes in her behavior that hinted at guilt. She would sometimes pause, as if sensing his observation, or hesitate before texting Ryan back. But she never suspected the extent of his knowledge. Elliot began leaving subtle tests for her. A casual mention of a friend's party would see if she lied about attending. He would forget his phone in the living room, leaving her the opportunity to check it. Every slip, every hesitation, every tiny lie was logged in his mental notebook. One evening, Elliot decided to push the boundaries further. He sent a private message to Ryan from a fake account, posing as someone innocently curious about a mutual hobby. The replies were cautious at first, but then Ryan grew careless. His messages hinted at times and places he had met Vanessa, small details that matched the group chat messages Elliot had seen. Elliot saved everything. Every word was ammunition. Every flirty remark, every confirmation of the affair, was another brick in the wall he was building. And yet, despite the meticulous planning, Elliot's heart remained shattered. He remembered the laughter they had shared, the promises whispered in the dark, the vacations where they had thought the world belonged to them alone. Now, those memories were tainted, replaying over and over like a cruel joke. In his quiet moments, Elliot allowed himself to feel the full weight of his emotions. Anger, humiliation, grief. They were relentless, but they also steeled him. He had thought love was supposed to protect him, but now he realized that trust without evidence could be weaponized against him. His love for Vanessa, the deep, unwavering love, had become a tool for self-destruction. He would not let that happen. Weeks passed. Elliot became more strategic. He noticed patterns in Vanessa's outings with her friends, the way she left the house for a work dinner, but returned hours later, phone in hand, pretending nothing had happened. He installed a small, discreet tracking app on the car he occasionally borrowed, just to confirm her movements. Everything matched up: the deception, the lies, the carefully crafted facade she maintained. One Friday night, Vanessa invited him to a quiet dinner at home, insisting she had a new recipe she wanted to try. Elliot smiled, accepted, and went along, though his mind was elsewhere. While she cooked, he casually set up a small recording device in the living room, under the guise of testing a new voice assistant. Vanessa didn't notice. She laughed, humming to herself, completely unaware that every word, every inflection, would later be a piece of evidence. By now, Elliot was balancing two lives. The husband everyone saw, smiling, attentive, supportive, and the investigator, meticulous, calculating, and emotionally on edge. It was exhausting, but he knew he couldn't rush. Confrontation would come, yes, but only when the timing was perfect, when every lie could be exposed, every detail undeniable. And so he waited. Every day, every interaction, every message brought him closer to the inevitable showdown. He knew Vanessa's betrayal was not just a casual mistake. It was deliberate, calculated, and ongoing. And he, Elliot Kane, would make sure that when the truth came to light, there would be no room for denial, no corner to hide in, and no lies that could save her. For now, he would play the part of the loving, unsuspecting husband. But beneath that calm exterior, a storm was gathering. A storm fueled by betrayal, fueled by meticulous preparation, fueled by the quiet but unstoppable resolve of a man who had been wronged beyond measure. Elliot Kane had waited long enough. Weeks of careful observation, meticulous documentation, and quiet manipulation had brought him to a point where there was no room for doubt. Every lie Vanessa had told, every secret meeting, every flippant comment in that group chat was now evidence he could present. The storm he had been preparing for was ready to break, and he could no longer maintain the fragile act of normalcy. It was a Thursday evening. Vanessa had spent the day at work and promised she'd come home early to help with dinner. Elliot had already set the stage, printed screenshots of texts, social media posts, carefully highlighted with timestamps, and recordings he had made over the past weeks, all stored in a folder on his laptop. He had thought carefully about the confrontation. He didn't want to scream. He didn't want a chaotic fight that would leave more scars than necessary. He wanted undeniable truth, undeniable proof, and then control. Vanessa arrived home, smiling, still oblivious. She hugged him tightly, kissed him on the cheek, and asked how his day had been. Elliot returned the hug, his expression calm, almost casual. The contrast between his composed demeanor and the storm raging inside him would, he knew, be disarming. "Vanessa," he said quietly, motioning toward the living room. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered slightly. She followed him, sensing, perhaps, that the tone of his voice carried weight she hadn't heard in weeks. Elliot closed the door behind them, turned toward her, and finally let the dam break. "I know," he began, his voice steady but heavy. "Everything. The group chat, Ryan, the texts, the lies." Vanessa froze. For a moment she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Her eyes flicked to the laptop on the table, the folder he had carefully labeled, Vanessa's betrayal, evidence. I don't know what you mean," she stammered, her usual confidence slipping. Elliot clicked open the folder. Screenshots of group chat messages appeared on the screen. Vanessa laughing with her friends about him, openly joking about the affair. Every detail of her meetings with Ryan. Every text where she bragged about deceiving him. There was no denying it. "Do you see this?" Elliot's voice was low but deadly calm. "Every word, every lie, every late-night meeting, it's all here. And you thought I wouldn't notice." Vanessa's face turned pale. She opened her mouth again, and this time, Elliot didn't let her. "Save it," he said firmly. "I don't want excuses. I don't want lies. I don't want apologies that are meaningless. I want the truth." "Why, Vanessa? Why him?" Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time, Elliot saw a flicker of fear, guilt, and something almost like regret. "Elliot, I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I don't know. I was lonely. Lonely. Elliot's voice sharpened, but he held himself in check. We have a life together. We have a home. You have me. And still, you lied. You betrayed everything we built. Vanessa began to sob. I made a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you. Elliot listened, but the anger and hurt he had carefully bottled for weeks now surged forward. He had expected this, and he had planned for it. He wanted honesty, but more than that, he wanted accountability. I've tried to ignore it, he said, his hands trembling slightly. But I can't, and I won't. Not anymore. You need to understand what this has done to me. He took a deep breath and began presenting the evidence systematically. Every lie, every meeting, every message. Vanessa tried to interject, to rationalize, to explain, but Elliot's calm presentation, combined with the undeniable proof, left her speechless. Each piece of evidence she tried to minimize only dug a deeper hole. By the time he finished, Vanessa was shaking. Elliot, I'm so sorry, please. I can fix this. Elliot shook his head. No, fixing it isn't enough. You broke the trust. You lied not once, but over and over. I don't know who you are anymore. Vanessa's sobs filled the room, but Elliot's mind was clear. He felt no love in that moment, only the precise, cold realization that he had to walk away. You know what? He said softly, almost eerily calm. I've been thinking about how to handle this for weeks, and I've decided. This ends now. We're done. Divorce. That's the only way forward. You made your choice. I made mine. Vanessa's voice cracked. No. Elliot, please, we can work this out. You already worked it out, he interrupted. With him, not with me. Elliot left the living room briefly, returning with a folder containing all financial documents, keys, and papers she would need. He placed them on the table. Take what you need. You won't live here anymore. You won't have access to me, to my trust, to my life. And Ryan, he doesn't get to replace me in any way. You'll deal with him on your own. Vanessa could only stare. The gravity of the situation, the finality of his words, left her paralyzed. For the first time in years, Elliot Kane had taken control of the narrative of his life. Before leaving, Elliot allowed himself a small, quiet act of retribution, a minor but symbolic one. He logged into her social media accounts from her open laptop, changed all the passwords, and posted a subtle but unmistakable message to the friends who had laughed with her in the group chat. Truth always comes to light. Nothing vulgar, nothing overt, but enough to let them know he had seen everything. Then, without another word, he left. He walked out of the house that had been their home for years, into the cold Denver night, feeling the weight of betrayal, but also the first strange sense of freedom in months. For the first time, Elliot Kane realized something profound. He had survived the unthinkable. And while he had lost the woman he loved, he had not lost himself. The weeks after the confrontation were a blur for Elliot Kane. Divorce papers, lawyers, and the bureaucratic grind of ending a marriage took up most of his days. But unlike Vanessa, he felt no panic, no desperation. He moved through the process with a grim efficiency, determined to sever every connection that had once bound him to the woman who had betrayed him so thoroughly. Vanessa, meanwhile, seemed to oscillate between denial, regret, and anger. She called, texted, and even showed up at his apartment once, pleading for reconciliation. Each attempt was met with polite but firm resistance. Elliot had learned a harsh lesson. Love could be weaponized against a man's trust, but control over his own life was inviolable. He made small changes, symbolic gestures that helped him reclaim his space. He changed the locks, cleared old photos from their shared devices, and began decluttering the house of reminders. But he didn't act in haste or with petty revenge. His acts were deliberate, quiet, controlled, like the man he had become over the past few weeks. One day, Elliot received a notification from the very group chat that had started it all. Vanessa had left it, along with Madison and Tori, but the chat remained. Elliot opened it one last time. Messages from the past months were still there, echoing laughter at his expense. He scrolled slowly, letting it sink in. These were not just messages. They were evidence, memories, lessons. Instead of rage, he felt a strange serenity. He saved screenshots for his own closure, then deleted the chat entirely. No notifications, no reminders. Just silence. Elliot's friends noticed the change in him. His old roommate, Kyle, commented on how calm and centered he seemed. "You look free," Kyle said. "I don't know how you got through it, but you did." Elliot smiled faintly. "It wasn't easy," he admitted, "but I had to face it head on. And now, I can finally move forward." He threw himself into work and hobbies he had neglected. Weekends that had once been filled with social obligations became times for long hikes in the Rockies, evenings with books he had been meaning to read, and quiet nights spent sketching landscapes in his apartment. The pain of betrayal lingered, but he channeled it into growth, reflection, and subtle acts of self-care. Vanessa tried to contact him several more times, each attempt more desperate than the last. Elliot never responded. He had learned that some doors, once closed, could never be reopened. He didn't need closure from her. He had closure from himself. One evening, Elliot allowed himself a small, private act of vindication. He sent a carefully worded email to the company where Vanessa worked, anonymously warning them that she had been engaged in questionable behavior that might affect her professional reputation. Nothing illegal, nothing overtly aggressive, just a subtle nudge to let the truth follow her. He didn't act out of spite. He acted out of principle. Vanessa had taken his trust and weaponized it. Now, he could let her face consequences on her own terms. Months passed. Elliot began dating again, cautiously at first, wary of the vulnerability that had once been exploited. But he noticed a shift in himself. He was stronger, more self-aware, and unwilling to settle for anything less than honesty and respect. He no longer questioned himself, no longer doubted his intuition. One winter morning, as snow fell softly outside his apartment window, Elliot reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the investigation, the confrontation, and the ultimate severing of ties with Vanessa. It had left scars, yes, but also clarity. He had survived a storm that would have destroyed a lesser man. He had reclaimed his life, and in doing so, discovered a resilience he hadn't known existed. Elliot Kane knew he would never forget Vanessa, Ryan, or the laughter that had once humiliated him. But he also knew that memory was no longer a weapon against him. It was a reminder of strength, of vigilance, and of the unwavering importance of self-respect. And as he stepped outside into the crisp winter air, breathing in the quiet, frozen morning, Elliot smiled. Not because he was unscarred, not because he had forgotten, but because he had survived. And in surviving, he had finally found himself. He walked down the street, head held high, unburdened by betrayal, unshackled by lies, ready to face whatever came next. The storm had passed, and in its wake, Elliot Kane had emerged whole.